You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho and Ashley Hardgrave. All right, this week, as we're recording on Martin Luther King Day, we go inside the huddle with two black divas. First up, it's soprano Symone Harcum, the star of Opera Philadelphia's upcoming production of The Anonymous Lover by Joseph Bologne. Then, Jordan Pitts, the creator of New York City and Paris Grand Opera diva Creatine Price, goes inside the huddle to share his experience in France's Got Talent. Plus, it's a holiday and literally nothing else is happening today, January 20th, 2025. So we're giving the 2-minute drill the day off. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger, just for sharing your own hot take. Now, Oliver and Ashley are here in the ether. This is another remotely recorded episode. Oliver is either hiding from the planned ice raids in Chicago or sleeping until 6 p.m. because he's on Australian Open time. Either way, he told me to make that joke, so please don't cancel me. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Later this month, Opera Philadelphia presents L'Amant Anonyme, The Anonymous Lover by Joseph Bologne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges. The cast includes friend of the show Jonathan McCulloch. It also features the Opera Philadelphia debuts of tenor Trayvon D. Walker in the title role of The Anonymous Lover, conductor Kalina Bovell, and our guest Symone Harcum in the principal role of Leontine. It's not Symone Harcum's first time singing this role in the Bologna Opera. She has sung Leontine for Minnesota Opera, where she's also sung roles like Almirena in Handel's Rinaldo, Donna Anna in Don Giovanni, Micaela and Carmen, and Mimi in La Boheme. Before we begin our conversation, let's hear a little bit of Don Giovanni. This is Orsai chi l'onore from Minnesota Opera. Symone Harcum, welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we tend to not go that far back into people's formative years and their training, because I think that's all stuff that people can find out for themselves if they're interested. But just to let the audience know, one of your teachers, and I hope to say also mentors, is Denise Graves.
Yeah.
Can we talk about her a little bit?
Of course we can.
Okay. So we are big Denise Graves fans, and my co-host Ashley Hardgrave went to WNO and saw the Fidelio.
Oh yeah.
And was like, that was a moment,
Gorgeous situation happening there.
Yeah. From what I read in your bio, it feels like you were sort of persuaded to pursue singing, and it wasn't sort of like, yes, I'm going to do this. It's more like somebody realized you had a voice and encouraged you to do more with it. Is that sort of right?
That's sort of right. I was persuaded to pursue opera. I was already singing quite a lot all my life. It happened in undergrad, my junior year, really, when I got a new teacher who had been in the world of opera, and I was studying to be a choral conductor. I was music education. And she said, you really should audition for the Virginia Opera. The chorus down the street, you're great chorus singer, you do this and you do that. And I was like, okay, no, don't want to do that. Sounds terrible. At the time, I had never seen an opera in live. I knew it. I was a good student, so I knew about opera. But I was like, no, that sounds terrible. And she said, well, you're going to be a teacher and you're going to need an extra paycheck. And that is one. And I said, you're right. And I will do that. So I went and auditioned, and they put me in one show, Pearl Fishers. And my teacher, she sat with me and she worked that diction because I wasn't going to embarrass her.
I mean, there's only one role in. Were you Layla?
No, I was in the chorus.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought, oh, let's cast her as the lead.
No, absolutely not. And so they put me in Pearl Fishers, and I sang it, and I loved it. And yeah, I really had a great time learning about this art form from the people who had been doing it for at least at Virginia Opera for my whole life. These choristers who were career choristers, and they live and breathe this stuff. And I spent 4 years at Virginia Opera in the chorus while I was teaching middle school chorus, and I fell in love with it. And yes, I was coerced to apply for grad school for voice by my teacher at the time. The same teacher that sent me there, Adam Turner, who was chorus master and then like principal conductor, I think, by the time I left, and the principal coach there, Shelby Rhodes. So they sent me on to audition, and I did. I auditioned to Peabody. I auditioned at Peabody and University of Maryland only because it was home for me, near Baltimore, and I got in, and I wasn't going to accept, surprisingly enough, but then I got this email from Denise Graves, who I knew by name, but not, much about. And basically, the email basically said, hello, what are you waiting for? And I was like, oh. It was like somebody's auntie had entered the chat. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm going. that was kind of it.
Okay. Well, can we talk about... there's so much that conversation brings up. First of all, we're going to get back to Denise Graves in a second, but that you sort of entered the opera world almost as a fully formed adult. It wasn't like you were doing it in your undergrad and studying it and getting all of the anxiety that we get as undergrads learning about opera with our peers and realizing how much there is to learn. You just sort of walked into it already, like with a sense of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Also, without having any aspirations to for a professional solo career in opera, right. It was all fun. It was just all fun and all discovery, and it was that until well after I left Peabody, I think.
Well, did you realize, if you can rewind the clock back to that age, what a big deal it would be to have a role like Donna Anna under your belt, or even Micaela under your belt?
No.
Yeah. So I think that's informative because, you think of a role like Donna Anna, and it's technically one of the most difficult things to sing, like in all of opera repertoire. And this is one of the first roles that you end up singing.
It's something. I mean, I think that along with the delaying of that kind of anxiety surrounding singing, because it does creep in, and it crept in more for me as I started to develop a reputation for, whatever that was. Symone is this, Symone is that, all those things.
What's her flock? Yeah. Putting you in a box. Yeah.
That I had to hold up, and I wasn't really able to just, always sing just for the enjoyment of it and for the exploration of it. But I actually had to meet a standard that has been set by me, So that does creep in, but there was the delaying of that, but there was also me being able to, because I don't know the roles because every single opera was so new to me because I hadn't studied it for so long. I hadn't listened to all the other sopranos who sang it and had, all their issues or things like that.
And face planting and Orsai chi l'onore.
I don't know, so I didn't come in with the any sort of expectation for this role or any of them really. It was what my voice liked to sing at that moment. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. Or, okay, not today. It really felt that light. And I feel so lucky to have entered this world in the way that I did.
So can we talk about the influence that Denise Graves has had on your career and maybe some of the things you've learned from her directly or by, examining her career?
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think, of course, she's an incredible teacher, just a wonderful, wonderful teacher, an incredible coach, character, the voice, all of it is there. But for me, being a person who likes to learn by observing and learn the intricacies of things rather than or the world surrounding the thing that I'm doing, the access that we had to her and her career and what she was doing was, just so valuable. Getting to go to those rehearsals, that she was in. I went to WNO quite a lot. I walked, I left Baltimore just to go to the museum sometimes in DC, and I would show up or be able to go into one of her rehearsals and see how everybody worked. You can see that some of these issues that we're having as students, they're dealing with them too. You know what I mean? And how everyone has to continually navigate those things. It took away some sort of expectation that at some point in your career, you would all of a sudden just have it all figured out, So at that point, I got into the young artist, roles, into those roles on stage that were mine without feeling like I was failing at something, right? Because I know I've had firsthand experience and access to watch how people deal with those things, those struggles all the time. So I don't know. It really was the access and the knowing of, or being able to, I'm talking in circles, to be able to have a firsthand experience of how someone at her level deals with this, this career.
So in addition to being, having an incredible instrument, she's also one of her generation's greatest actresses and, stage animals. Mm-hmm. Does she work on stuff like that with you?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Of course. One thing I will say is that when I got to Peabody and when I met her for certain, I was like, everything is very dramatic here. Like everything is so dramatic. And the interesting thing about being a student is that you can try your best and it's still not quite there, right? You can be trying your hardest, but you just haven't built up the extraness that you need to actually thrive in these roles, And so me learning more and more that I have the capacity for more, because there was never a moment where it was like, yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. Like that was it. That was very good, but you need even more. Right. And every time, all day, every day, I'm like, I need more and more and more. Where's that going to come from? But now as someone who is living out this career, I completely understand. I get it.
Well, we're speaking to you as you are in rehearsals for the Joseph Bologne L'Amant Anonyme, where you play really the lead role. There's two lead roles of Leontine, which you've already sung at Minnesota Opera. And I'm not sure if this is all one calendar year, or if this is across 2 seasons, but it seems to me that you sang 4 roles in a very short amount of time at Minnesota.
It seems that way because it is that way. It was over 2 seasons, though. Yeah. Yes, it was.
So Leontine in Lamont, Micaela and Carmen, Alminera in Ronaldo, which is sort of out of left field, and then Donna Anna. So Alminera doesn't Almirena
Yeah.
doesn't really fit into the category of the other three. It's more of the soubrette, like the ingenue role of that opera. I would put you more as a sorceress if it were up to me, you know.
Well, if you would have seen our sorceress, you might have thought something different. I mean, I think in that setting, it was sort of like the question of Donna Anna or Elvira, Mimi or Musetta. It could really go either way. And specifically in that space that we had, it was the box theater that Minnesota Opera has.
Okay.
And it was just it was a fun experience to be able to do it. It doesn't seem like it fits, but honestly, loved that. I loved that.
Well, you get the most famous aria of the whole night, so
I know, right?
Yeah,
And it allowed you to sing in a way that in a sort of tender way that I'm not normally allowed to do, in some of these things. Non mi dear, good Lord, I wish I could sing it like Yanga, right?
Yeah.
That sort of sensitivity, but the space, the orchestration, it doesn't allow for that.
Yeah.
And so to be able to imbue more emotion and more sensitivity vocally into that music was, just so much fun.
So you had this relationship with Minnesota Opera, which gave you the opportunity to sing your first Leontine in the Bologna Opera, and now you're returning to the role. Now that you have it under your belt after a couple of years, is there something that you can add to it? Now having sung, more richly orchestrated things like Carmen and Don Giovanni and La Boheme.
Yeah. Well, I think I have a lot more facility now than I did
3 years ago. Yeah,
for sure. And the interesting thing about this role is when I came into it, I was like, this is like 3 sopranos. Mm-hmm. Each aria sounds like it's somebody else. Like you need a little bit of Almirena in there. You need a lot of bit of Donna Anna, I think, for this role, and so I think I'm a lot more nimble vocally than I was approaching this 3 years ago. But also, I'm a better actress. I think I have just the incredible amount of stage experience that I've gathered since 3 years ago. Like you said, it's a lot packed into that short amount of time. I think she can have more dimension, and I can more skillfully move throughout those dimensions. I think, and I hope it's feeling a lot easier and a lot more settled than it was before. And just returning to roles is freeing in such an incredible way. I've done it now. I've done it now with this role with Donna Anna. I've done that twice now, and with Countess, So yeah, it's just she's so much more dynamic now, more sure of herself, as am I.
And have you learned anything about like 18th century now that everybody watches Bridgerton and stuff like that? Like, does it help you like be a little bit more, I don't know, understand what to do with your body, or, why there's so much formality in some of the music and in the language?
Yes, I think so. I think we're actually doing this one, it's period, which many of the shows recently just have not been. So you weren't restricted in that way. But that's always a hard thing to find, how to show those different sides of that character with such social, you're put in this social behaviors box, right?
It's a corset. It literally is a corset.
Yeah, I think I've learned quite a lot more about it. But the things, and like you said, like Bridgerton and things like that, I feel like it was such a big hit. And in a lot of ways, it opened up a lot of doors for us, on stage as well, because we've conditioned our audience in a different way now, that now we can we can find a little bit more modernity to, to add to these characters and to the ways they interact with each other.
And Black people existed in the 18th century.
Exactly. Okay. And so did our nuances and our reactions, I completely agree. And I just think it's just so much fun. But I always believe that in order to push the boundaries successfully, you have to know what they are first. And I think, our training and those restrictions that we've come to know so well help us to more effectively step out of the box where we can.
Oh, we have time for one last question, and we're going to go back to the beginning. So you were starting your degree as a music educator, and it turns out that you are still an educator. Your alma mater has invited you to be on the voice faculty. This is Norfolk State University. And we're just learning about you as an artist, and you're just, your career is taking off. How are you balancing being tied down to a vocal studio and traveling to sing, lead roles in operas?
Surprisingly well. Honestly, surprisingly well. I was only supposed to take on the post for 1 year to step in for a teacher who had to leave suddenly. And it just so happened that this was last year where a lot of my contracts that I had were either canceled or postponed for, a lot of reasons. So when they asked me, I was ready to say no, but then I said, actually, I have a little bit of time and maybe I can make it work. Reluctantly, because of all that, I always knew that I would teach, but I thought it would be later in my career. But yeah, I found some really fun ways to remain engaged with my students. I think that I came in thinking that they were the same kind of student that me and my colleagues were in undergrad, but so much has changed then in their development, right? The music is not as prominent in schools, before college, and COVID, of course, they weren't able to interact with people that much. But so I'm restructuring the way that things are, and I'm building that things were for me, and I'm building out a new way of interacting. And it's been really successful. And despite my best efforts, I'm being more and more drawn to my students and to teaching. It feels early. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But hey, we'll see.
It's an undergrad program.
It's an undergrad. Well, okay. Undergrad, yeah.
Okay, so you're not that much older than the grad students.
No, but that was the case when I was teaching middle school too. I started teaching middle school, and these kids were like 7 years younger than me, and I was like, "What is going on?"
Briefly, can you comment on how you think this generation is different than your generation? Like, is it that they don't know how to interact with people because of the whole COVID thing? Are they too engaged with their technology? Do they have too much information? They don't know how to, sort out what is good and what is bad? I think it depends on who you were talking about, and all of those things may be true for any one of those. But what I've noticed is that we were a lot louder, right? Especially in the music building. Right, around other musicians. We were loud, we were out there. Whether you could sing, whether you really couldn't, you were going to do it, okay? And people were going to know that you were there. And there were many people that you had to say, hey, step back a little bit, give less. That's not the case now. They're a lot more timid and a lot more inward, inwardly facing. And I just find that it's the first thing that needs to be built is that confidence for them. And they're like affirming their being there, however they're going to be there. Just, be there and make yourself known, despite the fact that, we came in learning how to read music. Like we knew how to read music. Most people did, because we were learning that in elementary school and middle school and high school. It was like a part of our curriculum, That's not the case anymore. So I think that the path to proficiency is a little bit
longer for these students. And I'm hoping that education in general can adjust to that, and start doing the work, to get them to the level that maybe more of us were on when I was in school. But I know how old people are, and I know that I'm sounding like an old person. Be like, my day, we were this and we were that. Where maybe we weren't, but so I don't know how much of that is true. But there's, I think, certainly a huge difference, and I think it's up to us to fix it. To support them in getting to where they need to be.
One of the arias for Leontine from Joseph Bologne's The Anonymous Lover, trust me, you don't want to hear me pronounce the title in French, our thanks to Symone Harcum and friend of the show Frank Luzzi of Luzzi Media for coordinating this interview. Opera Philadelphia's production of The Anonymous Lover opens January 31st. Find more information on the webpage for this episode on operaboxscore.com.
Opera Class. Sports Radio Crass. This is Opera Box Score.
I first encountered our next guest as his drag persona, Creatine Price. You may have heard me mention this a few episodes back at the end of 2024 when I talk to you about the brilliant The Trombone Shall Sound from his drag Messiah, which, make no mistake, I will be catching next year. We connected on social media, and I am so delighted to have tenor Jordan Pitts on the show. I was like, we have to have him on. So Jordan had a principal artist debut with City Opera as the drag queen Renata in Ian Bell and Mark Campbell's premiere of Stonewall. He's been singing all over the place. He's going to tell us a little bit about his career, how Creatine came to be. I am so delighted to have him with us. But before we do that, we're going to hear just a little bit of Acerba Voluta from Chilea's Adriana Lecouvreur. Jordan Pitts, welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
We are delighted to have you. Okay, so we're going to kick this off. We don't usually go as far back as like formative years with our guests, but I think we've got to talk about your training as an opera singer. We've got to talk about the creation of Creatine Price and how those performance skills like came together. So walk us through that.
Yeah, it's a long story. It's a really, really long story, but essentially I've trained as a baritone for many years, like everybody had a passion for musical theater in the beginning. And yeah, exactly. I fell on opera kind of just by accident, in high school. I didn't really find that, musical theater was fitting all of my needs. I had a very loud and annoying voice.
Oh my God, me too.
Oh my God. Yes, all of us. So everybody was like, maybe you should try something else. And, I was the lead in all the musicals in high school. And so I wanted to be a star. I wanted to be a diva. But when I discovered opera, I was in high school. I went to go see Carmen at SUNY Fredonia, which is near Buffalo, where I'm from. And it was the first opera I'd ever seen, but it was also like a conglomerate of all the things that I was good at, right? I've always been really good at languages. I've always been really good at theory and being a musician sort of in a technical sense. And decided that, wow, this is everything I've wanted to do. And I auditioned for a bunch of different places and didn't get in. Fredonia was the only place I got in. And I just ran with it, I had some sort of issues really breaking into the young artist scene just because I didn't really have I wouldn't say I had bad instruction. I just didn't really have like a natural facility around
Mhm.
being a singer. And I really struggled with that well into my early 20s, even through grad school. Um, and to make a very long story short, I always tried to do different things. I always knew that the traditional sense of a career was going to sort of evade me because I had so much catching up to do. And
Yeah.
also, I just had all this passionate energy inside of me that I wanted to put into something special. And I never knew what that was, but it was under development for many, many years, you know? It was just like, that sixth sense you have about yourself sometimes where you're just like,
Yeah.
I know I'm destined for something, but I also know that like this, whatever the this is kind of maybe not for me.
Yeah.
Um, and it's weird because now that I don't, sort of on a separate note, now that I don't specifically have like a traditional opera career, now more like traditional things are finding me. It's really weird and counterintuitive. But anyways, to pay my bills and to get through living in New York City in my 20s, I had to start working in nightlife. I was a go-go dancer. I was all kinds of things in all the clubs. And I happened upon drag, and I had a friend from college who did drag, and I always thought like, gosh, that would be a lot. I don't know if I'm really made for that. But yeah, I just started doing it kind of randomly when I was like 27, 26, 27. And I just developed a passion for it. And my first, like my principal artist debut, in 2019 was with New York City Opera in an opera called Stonewall, singing a role written for a drag queen, named Renata. It was an opera by Ian Bell, wonderful, fabulous British composer.
Friend of the show. One of our original interview guests when this podcast first started in 20, whenever. He was one of our very first guests. And Mark Campbell's been a guest as well. So
I did know that. I knew Mark had been on here. I did not know Ian had been on here. That's amazing. Ian is, I'm firmly, squarely House of Bell.
Okay.
My my formative years in drag are House of Bell, hashtag House of Bell. So yeah, I just kind of like did a deep dive into it after that because I loved it. I loved the combination of singing the way I normally do and bringing in all those things that we do as singers to really heighten our craft and bring something that's very high quality. We talked about the sort of level of coming in like gymnastics, right? That sense of like, there's really high stakes here. That plus drag was just so thrilling. So I developed a drag persona formerly known as Petty Yende.
They're both so good.
Thank you. Formerly known as Petty Yende. That's a whole other bag of worms. That blew up in my face a few years later. So, but I worked as Petty Yende for many years, and then after this situation, I developed the idea for Creatine Price to kind of be that plus.
Right.
It's like, now I've sort of had fun. Petty Yende was more like I did twirl and lip sync and did all those things. But gosh, like Creatine Price for me was a birthing of singing all the repertoire that I've always loved and wanted to sing and trying to bring my technique up to the level to meet it.
Right.
And luckily I have a teacher that is so game for all of that. And it's weird and it's crazy. And that's kind of like the story. I don't know what else to say.
That's a heck of a story.
Yes.
It's amazing. And I just am curious about your own musical taste because just from the stuff that I've seen, you're not giving your audience like the hits. You're not giving them like, okay, here's O mio babbino caro. It's like you're actually asking them to hear things that even like people who like opera don't know so well.
Yeah. No, that's totally my MO, Oliver. Like that's my MO. That's my mission in a way because I'm tired of hearing the hits, the way that a lot of people sing them constantly. I mean, yes, I do love, the hits, but for me, I think my tastes boil down to what brings the drama and what brings a level of intellectualism to drag, the element of drag as well. that I think is a little bit different, you know? And for me, I try to perform things that I feel connected to, right? So like I've sang this Adriana aria, not just the Cerba Voluta, but the soprano aria all the time because I just felt connected to it. I felt like when I was singing it, like I felt like Diva when I was singing it. And it just, I don't know, it just comes from that. I have no desire to sort of fit what other people want to hear. I want to bring out what I love, and I hope that that reaches people and touches people. And right now it is. So that's kind of wild to me. Like, even if nothing had ever happened in my career, I would still have just been happy getting up and singing the stuff that I sing.
Do you feel like for some of these audiences who are probably not even interested in opera, the majority of them, that you need to contextualize what Adriana Lecouvreur even is?
Yeah, and I do sometimes. Sometimes I don't. And I think the beauty of it is that a lot of people can appreciate what it is without knowing necessarily the context. You know, they can hear that and they would like, oh my gosh, that's like a big high note, or, you know, this is supposed to be maybe more like intense and quiet, and people can tune in. Like we don't give people enough credit sometimes to really read what's happening in a performance. There are a lot of people that just don't get it, and I'm fine with that. Like, totally fine with that. But I do provide context, and my show that I've developed over the last year and a half, which is now housed at Red Eye here in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. It's called Cantata. Formerly it was called Cantata with a U. But I decided to go with Cantata because it was a little bit more PC, and I just feel like opera audiences are a little bit more like, okay, like we'll go to that. Every time I bring it to Fire Island, it is still Cantata.
Oh, yeah. But this one you can list in the paper. Yeah.
This one I can list in the paper. So Cantata is, for me, a safe space for music education. It starts in a direction of music education and ends in the world of drag. It's sort of like that journey. And it's been a hit. I don't know how, but it's been an absolute hit. It's what birthed Creatine Price, really, in the sense that I know her now, and things like Drag Messiah, which I'm sure we'll get to. But
we will talk about Drag Messiah in 1 second. But I just don't know if you're following sort of the I should not even say counter, the male soprano revolution that's happening in Europe right now with artists like Bruno Dessau and Mayan Licht, and how there's like this what's his name, Max Cencic, who has this company that's doing operas that are just chock full of countertenors, and some of them in drag, you know, and you know you're singing in your modal voice, but clearly your ethos is in line with that type of work, which is not happening in the US yet. Are you going to be the person to create the male whatever, you're a tenor, you know, like the drag tenor, countertenor, or, you know, drag opera, you know?
I would hope so. I think that's kind of my long-term goal is to bring that about. I'm still figuring it out. I think for me, like I said, it comes down to like what I feel connected to. And I think bringing, my modal voice into it is what I do best, and is what I feel most secure in. I think doing drag and then singing in a countertenor voice has its place, of course, like it's amazing, but I just don't, I want to be bringing my technique to the level of singing the arias that are not written for my voice type, because it's a point I'm trying to prove, you know what I mean? That like the gendering of the voice, makes sense in some ways and doesn't in a lot of others, you know? I think a lot of people don't feel, I'm sure, you know, you guys can attest to this. Sometimes we don't feel aligned with the rep that is given to us.
Yep.
So speaking of the rep that is given to us, so I am a Baroque tenor, and so Messiah is my thing. So tell us about Creatine Price's Messiah.
The Drag Messiah came about randomly. I had a spot to fill in one of the cantatas. I think it was in maybe May or June. And I was thinking of, you know, people to invite. I had a friend suggest a fabulous queen in Boston named Tilda Watersclear. Tilda Watersclear, like the water is now running clear.
I'm deeply in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a trombonist. phenomenal musician. I heard that instantly when I looked at her Instagram and saw her videos on YouTube, and I thought to myself, like, gosh, this is a great opportunity to do not the trumpet shell sound, but the trombone shell sound, which I know that you guys reported on when it happened for the first time.
That is how I learned about you and said, I have to tell everyone I know about this.
You're so sweet. Yeah, it just happened. I was like, gosh, do you think you could do this? And Tilda was like, yeah, I mean, it's just like an octave down and it sounds this way. And she sent a clip of her playing it. And I was like, oh my God, like, we need to do this. I mean, super fun. So yeah, I just posted it online. I mean, the show went really well, and I posted it online and it went mega viral. It had like, I think in total 2 million views across both platforms. And still counting, to this day. I think it's one of my most watched videos on my TikTok and on my Instagram. And then everybody in the comments was just asking if this was a full show. So I said, gosh, why not extend cantata and the world that is cantata to Drag Messiah and make Drag Messiah a thing. Didn't know how it was going to go. And to this day, it is my most sold out show. I mean, yeah.
The trombone shall sound, the dead shall be raised, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible. The trombone shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be
So, Jordan, how do you see Creatine, or do you see Creatine fitting into the opera industry at large? Is this, I'm just going to keep making my own stuff, or are you going to try to like put her in different places and spaces?
Yeah, I would love to have Creatine show up in different roles. Obviously there's maybe a smaller pool of roles that might be appropriate for at this point in time in opera. I would love to get to the point where that might not be the case, but I'm not exactly sure what that looks like for me. I know that what's great about Creatine is that it keeps me creative, keeps me creating, and keeps me putting out stuff that just makes me feel whole as an artist and makes me connect with people that are like-minded. I think, and right now we're in a position in opera where maybe it doesn't fit in, and that's okay. I'm just going to try to keep knocking that wall down.
Would you audition as Creatine or would you audition as Jordan?
I've done both at this point. So I think a lot of people are more interested in hearing me audition for tenor roles at this moment, just from what my agent tells me. But, Creatine for me is a long-term project. So the possibilities are kind of endless at this point for me.
Well, how would you characterize your interactions with the so-called legacy audiences, 60 plus?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, guys. It's a mixed bag. Obviously, I was just on television. I was just on national television in France on La France en Incroyable Talent, France's Got Talent. And that brought Creatine Price to a lot of different eyes and ears. And from what I've looked at, it's been pretty difficult, honestly, if I'm honest. Yeah. It's been a very, very difficult thing for me to deal with, being in the public eye in a way of like a traditional opera audience. There are people that absolutely love to see what I'm doing because it sort of pokes fun at the fact that like drag is already in opera, like opera is already.
Yeah, she's already there. Mm-hmm.
She's already there. I mean, like what Netrebko does on stage, what Nadine Sierra does on stage, it is high drag. Yes, 100%. And so some people get that right away, but the majority of people, I would say, that are, let's say 60 plus or in the legacy era, as we're so politely calling them, don't fully get it. And there's been a very vehemently negative reaction to a lot of it.
In France or here in the US?
Both, but I think being on French TV, especially, it was really, really negative a lot of the time.
Oh no.
I hate that.
Can you tell us about the whole France's Got Talent story and the good parts of it too?
The good parts, I mean, it's full. The thing is, like, it is a good thing. It's not, I think the crash out of dealing with comment sections and all that stuff has come after for me because I was so focused on just doing it and getting through it because I didn't expect to advance at all. But the story is a bit strange. I posted a few videos. This is back in the Petiende days of me singing in drag, and I happened to come across Marianne James. Marianne James is one of the judges on the show, and she added me on Instagram and started messaging me right away and was very, sort of motherly to me and was like, oh gosh, your voice and everything that you do is just absolutely wonderful. Would you like to be on this show? And I said, yes, of course, an opportunity is an opportunity. Why not? And nothing ever happened. I didn't really hear about it for a while. I didn't expect, anything to come out of it. I just thought like, okay, maybe that conversation's done. So whatever. Years later, post-pandemic, posted some other stuff. She shared it. And then the producers reached out to me and they were like, hey, are you friends with Marianne James? I was like, I mean, yeah, like, we've been connected for many years at this point. Yeah. So they asked me to come on the show and surprise her. So originally it was just supposed to be sort of a guest artist. I come and surprise her kind of thing. But I did so well in that audition, quotation mark, audition episode that they asked me to come back for the quarterfinals and really compete for the 100,000 euro.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And girl, I just went up there and did my thing. That's what it comes down to. I kept the creative juices flowing. I thought to myself, like, this is an opportunity to really bring what I do to a national stage. And it just blew up. And I made it all the way to the finals. So yeah, didn't win, but I knew I wasn't going to win. Like I said, the response was sort of mixed given the public votes for the winner in these shows. And the Got Talent universe is a very unique one. Sometimes a little bit misunderstood by the opera industry, if I'm honest, in my experience. So yeah, it really was quite random.
Oh, you have to remember, we're still talking about people who have TVs and who watch like network television. So that already makes you automatically more conservative, A little bit, but also not really. M6 in France is quite like Netflix. That's where all of the baking show and all of those, streaming shows are at on M6 Plus. So it's a plus
M6 Plus, oui. I'm not going to be, that bitch on Apple Box Store being like M6 Plus. En fait, c'est M6 Plus. But yeah, it's quite like, sort of Netflix in Paris. There's a lot of streaming shows that people watch on there. All those like dating shows, 90 Day Fiancé, things like that are on there. So people watch it. Yeah.
Wow. So we are recording on Martin Luther King Day, January 20th, a day when nothing else happened. Just kidding. Today is Inauguration Day. And being a drag artist, what are your concerns for drag artists coming into this new, we'll call it an administration?
We'll call it an administration. I'll save my thoughts about that for another time, but drag...
Offline.
Offline. We'll circle back on that. Drag has been, I always say like drag is under attack. And that's sort of not hyperbole at this point. Drag is definitely under attack in the sense that femininity and feminism is under attack in this moment in time. I'm terrified, quite honestly, about the implications of this administration and what that means for the community. Particularly, queens come in all shapes, sizes, genders, expressions these days. And so us as a community are all linked to drag at this point. And it's quite terrifying. Like, I think moving forward, we need more unity amongst us to fight what's coming. And drag is resistance as well. Drag is a powerful tool to challenge what we see as the norms of gender and performance. And that in and of itself has been consistent through all the times in history that we faced such things as are happening in this country. The sort of onus to protect certain types of art and certain types of performance comes down to drag artists, comes down to queer performers, especially queer performers of color, which I am part of that community. And it sometimes falls on us to be culture carriers and torchbearers to improve and fight for the next generation. So,
I mean, opera is so queer. It always has been. And so it's funny that, like, you know, there's probably these ultra conservative people who want opera to be traditional. But if you really want opera to be traditional, you're actually embracing, you're embracing the drag.
You should be embracing the drag. Girl, like, pants rolls, okay? That's like one part of it. But also, like, men used to disfigure their bodies to accomplish the sound of another gender. Like, our history is entrenched in this, like, absence of real gender norms, right? In the traditional sense. That's the history behind the art form. So how do we divest from that? We can't. We actually cannot. The false sense of security that people have in the sort of more traditional world of opera it's funny, honestly. That's what Creatine Price is actually mostly about, is like poking fun at what everybody thinks is this sort of like, traditional value system. So
I have a friend who is a specialist in the French Baroque repertoire. And, you know, in the French Baroque operas, like the hero, the hunter, whatever, is always like taking a nap. You know, it's like, oh, I feel tired. I'm going to take a nap, you know. And like, it's the idea that in the French Baroque era, like having control of your art, having control of your gesture, having control of your ornaments, all of these graces was masculinity. You know, being able to dance was masculine. And now all those things, like, oh, you sing, oh, you dance, oh, you know, you have gestique when you talk, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's this like really, it's very gay. Like I live, like, it's, you know, I live for that. But that's our history, you know, and it's still alive today. That's the thing. Like if you go into any opera company, like we are so diverse and full of different types of personalities, right? And there's queens everywhere. Like we're everywhere in opera, you know? And we run opera, like, I mean, like gay men run opera, like it's crazy, you know?
Gay white men, you mean?
Gay white men specifically. I was trying to be a little bit more, you know, hush hush about it. But you know, that's the thing, is like that's what we encounter all the time. But it's sort of this thing that like, do opera goers and board members not know? Like,
yeah, who are we kidding? You know,
who are we kidding? Like, let's stop with the artifice. It's crazy, yeah. So. Yeah, but I'm not the only one that's doing this kind of work, you know, like Saphira Cristal, Monet Exchange, you know, these colleagues of mine. Monet and I have known each other for many, many years, and Jasmine Rice LaBeija, right? There's so many.
Oh, you guys have got to create like an opera for just all of you together, you know?
We need like a super group, just a yeah.
Maybe that's in the works, guys. I don't know.
Girls six Eva, you know.
When it's time for that breaking news, you let us know.
I'll let you know first. The Opera Box Score will be the first on the hit list for PR. Yeah.
Jordan Pitts, it's been so incredible to speak to you and to share your artistry with our audience. And yeah, we're watching and we're looking forward. And now we call it the OBS bump. Now you've got the OBS bump, and now you'll have tens of new followers.
Of course.
I'm looking forward to welcoming all of them, and all 4 or 5 of them. And truly, it was an honor just to be asked. And I've been a fan of you guys from afar for quite some time, and so thank you so much for making time to have me on here.
E la faccia infalina, la gente paga per rider vuole quasar la vita vola colombina, ridi aiato e ognuno applaudirà. che t'avvelena il cor.
Vesti la Juba from Creatine Price's semi-final performance on France's Got Talent. Our thanks again to Jordan Pitts for being our guest. You can follow Creatine Price on Instagram at Creatine Price and check out the website creatineprice.com. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end every episode, even as democracy crumbles before our very eyes. Let's start with Oliver Camacho.
If all goes according to plan, I will be interviewing Sandra Radvanovsky for my other job. And if there's extra time, I'll get a free throw from her. While preparing for that interview, I've been listening to a lot of her discography, and I stumbled across her Norma from Lyric Opera of Chicago in 2017. You can listen to it yourself on Spotify. It's crazy. It's a really great performance with Elizabeth DeShong and Russell Thomas. So we'll link to that in our show notes. That's my good call, is Norma from 2017 with Sandra Radvanovsky.
Ashley Hardgrave.
All right. My call is a call to action. Today was hard. I'm not going to lie. Today was hard. But we got through it. We're going to get through it. And we're going to need each other to get through it. So I leave you with the notion that we are more powerful together than they, and you know who they are, ever could be. We know this, but we're going to need to act on it. So my call to you to action is to find your communities, find your people, find the things that you care about and invest in them. Find your local arts and invest in those. It shouldn't just be about the Met. It shouldn't just be about La Scala. It should be about the arts and the creativity that exists in your own backyard. We don't get people to the Met and La Scala if we don't hear them in smaller places first. So find the things that you care about and invest your energy and your time in those. I know I'll be doing that here. I also know it's going to be hard to keep out the noise, but as scared as I am, as terrified as I am, I maintain the notion that the only way out is together and through. And so I hope that you will join me in finding the things that you care about and supporting those. We'll get through it, guys. I don't know how, but we're going to do it.
I have a good call coming off of Ashley's call there, and it's that there's a very good new recording of a piano piece, which is quite famous, but if you don't know it, I suggest you look it up. It's by Frederick Rzewski. It is called The People United Will Never Be Defeated. It's based on a protest song from the 70s in South America, and it's pretty immediately obvious why. That's something I've been listening to on repeat for the past few days. But this new recording by Takuya Otaki is quite good. I hope you will check it out, and keep in mind that it is true. The people united will never be defeated if we stand with each other. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. And that is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. And your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Ashley Hardgrave with guests Symone Harcum and Jordan Pitts, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you take a hands-free oath of office. We're back with an all-new show next week when Michael Spires takes a free throw on his baritone Fach. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more trombones sounding. Join us.